quickly take roll to see who is here. Make sure we're all back. Board Member Earl?
Yes.
Board Member Hanson?
Yes.
Board Member Thorpe?
I'm here.
Board Member Gravitt?
Yes.
Board Member Belknap?
Yes.
Board Member Lear? Board Member Lear?
No.
Board Member Cannon? Board Member Davis? Board Member Davis?
Here. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you. Board Member Newell?
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Haynes?
Yes.
Board Member Marsh?
Yes.
Board Member Nielsen? Board Member Nielsen? Board Member Huntsman? Chair Huntsman?
Present.
Board Member Bolter? Board Member Bolter?
Here, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep, thank you. Board Member Lear? Board Member Cannon? Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We have Board Member Lear, Board Member Cannon, and Board Member Nielsen currently not present. Okay. We are ready to move back to the item number 5, the monthly budget report. Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones with the monthly budget report. It's item 5.1. If we could just pull up the report that's posted in the backups in CivClerk. Essentially, the Utah State Board of Education remains fiscally sound.
Deputy Superintendent Jones, I need to interrupt for just a second. I apologize. I was supposed to remind all the board members to please refresh your Civic Clerk. There's been a couple of changes to a few things added to the backup, so just go ahead and refresh to make sure that you have the current information. I apologize for the interruption. Carry on, Mr. Jones.
Okay, no problem, ma'am. The Utah State Board of Education remains fiscally sound. We're able to meet all of our known obligations for the foreseeable future through year end of state fiscal year 2021. Pending any questions from board members or concerns with the report, I'll segue to the discretionary funds report.
Are there any questions from board members on the monthly budget report so far? You can continue.
Okay, on to item 5.2, which is the discretionary funds report. If we could pull that up for view, please. On the backups, thank you. Draw all board members' attentions to the upper right-hand corner. This is the initial amounts of funding in your discretionary account, broken out by state funds, general funds. FML stands for Federal Mineral Lease, Land Exchange, and Dedicated Credits. We start out with those initial balances. And as of this date of this report, we have remaining balances in the state funds, general funds, Federal Mineral Lease, and the Land Exchange. Below the upper right-hand corner is the tracking, if you will, of all of the different previously approved projects by the board. They're listed, it starts over in the left-hand column under the label projects. We also designate, moving left to right, we designate which line items, or not line items, which accounts those come from, in our system, how they're coded or designated, if you will. In the upper right-hand corner again, there is that remaining balance of federal mineral lease funds. So if it pleases the chair and the board members, I'd like to request that the chair recognize Deputy Superintendent Norman to discuss or, present a request for use of federal mineral lease funds. This is part of the process that we use to allow either board members or staff to make requests of the board for use of these balances. With that, may I turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Norman, Chair?
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. I'd like to thank you for giving us this time to request these funds. I'm speaking specifically to the position of the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. This position is highly needed at this time, especially with the 5 main areas of responsibility that are included in the outline that is uploaded in Board Doc in the job description. The first of those is leading the development and implementation of proactive diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives which will support USBE and its strategic plan. The second part of this is in guiding the development of a vision and effective strategy that champions the importance and the value of a diverse and inclusive environment. The third thing would be that they will engage staff in building and nurturing a welcome and inclusive culture throughout USBE. Fourth is in assessing potential barriers and developing strategies focused on recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce. And then the last of these is in supporting our LEAs, our local education agencies, in creating, implementing, and scaling up equitable and inclusive education programs and practices. Now, remembering that this position is one that will aid in supporting the 7 federally protected classes of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, age, and disability. There are at least 3 heavy lifts in items 10, 11, and 15 that are presented in the job description. And I just wanted to take a minute to go into detail on a couple of those so that you can see what this person may be doing and what that looks like for USBE. On item 10, it talks about serving as the USBE Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator. So as an agency that receives federal funds, the agency must provide accommodations for individuals with disabilities to enable them to access services and supports provided by the agency. And with that, right now, currently USBE has received numerous requests for accommodations from patrons in the recent months, but USBE does not have an administrator whose job it is to ensure that those accommodations are provided as required by ADA. So, and USB has also received audit hotlines complaint as well with ASL interpretation. So examples of what this might look like is really having requests for American Sign Language interpreters, large print versions of documents, audio files for documents, etc. And if you would like, I can even go into the risks associated with this. And one of the risks that would be associated if we don't have this is the fact that it's likely that complaints may be filed with USB, with the Department of Education, and through civil rights about the length of time it takes to provide the recently requested accommodations. The other on item number 11 is serving as a USB Title IX coordinator. Currently, we have our specialist who is in charge of 504, who is taking on this huge responsibility with the new regs. And so with that, we are not required to have a Title IX person at the state level, but USBE does provide LEAs with Title IX technical assistance. And we do this by staying updated on the requirements, which are new this year, and providing technical assistance for LEAs on their responsibilities. We also respond to complaints regarding alleged Title IX violations and collaborate with the Utah Division of Risk Management to meet the LEA's needs. So a risk associated with this is if USB does not have a Title IX coordinator, LEAs would have technical assistance elsewhere from attorneys and or state risk management. So, and then in item number 15, it states about it will help develop and implement a process to monitor statewide progress towards eliminating the achievement disparities among student groups. And this goes along with through the lens of equity, which the board has placed emphasis on, and what that looks like in looking at our graduation rates, dropout rates, disproportionate rate of disciplinary incidents, and those areas with chronic absenteeism and achievement in different areas as well. So those are the highlights of what the job description is and what this person will be doing at USBE. And at this time, I'd like to open up for any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions from board members? Board member Earl?
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand. This is an attorney that's going to make legal decisions on behalf of Title IX and these other items. Am I?
This is a director position, so they don't necessarily have to be an attorney. Having background in the law and learning about the law and being able to provide that information about what that looks like, and then communicating amongst others, then aids in that process.
Okay, I want more information about this particular position, and this is the first time I've thoroughly gone through this. I don't know if I missed this somehow. I don't feel comfortable moving in this direction without more detail, specifically because I feel like we may be duplicating things that we already have going on. Almost everything we do, we look through the eyes of equity. Everything that's been presented today, we've done that. So I really want to have more information prior to voting on something like this, some specifics.
Board Member Hanson.
Thanks. Just looking for a little bit of information. First, does higher ed have a similar position in their organization to this? That's one question. I'll just name my questions and then maybe you could respond. Then next, I'd really like to see an organization chart about how this person would fit into the USB organization, who would be reporting into this director, and what would happen there. And then also just a question about the level of the position. Is a director level the right level, or should it be someone placed in a different spot in the organization? I guess like Jenny, this one caught me by surprise a little bit, and maybe I wasn't thorough enough in going through the materials.
Chair Cummins, would you like for me to respond?
Please, Patty.
The first one, does higher ed have a similar position? Yes, as do most state agencies. And through the state agencies and the job descriptors, we did an analysis with HR with Michelle Watts about the level of what that looked like, and most of those were director positions. And then internally looking at it as a director position because it works across the agency instead of with a certain section. And so those were the three in organizationally putting it at a director. The person would be reporting to student achievement as those equity areas fall under the student support area. And most specifically, many of those areas fall directly under Assistant Superintendent Leah Voorhees, who's ready to respond if you have more technical questions about the attorney piece of it.
If I could just follow up, do we have a current overall organization chart for USB that would show how everything fits together?
Would you like for me to respond? We have within it, and we have an organizational chart. I know that each section has their own organizational chart. We don't have one grand chart that puts it all together, but we do have the chart disaggregated by each area. And so, for example, my area of student achievement would then be able to be disaggregated into teaching and learning, who has their own organizational chart, and then assessment that has their organizational chart, as well as student support, which has theirs as well.
Okay, does that answer your question, Board Member Hanson?
Kind of. I guess I'm just looking for a place where I could go to see, from the superintendent down, how does all this fit together? I don't imagine it would be one grand chart, but there would be charts that we could piece together to see all that. I have seen the different departments' org charts, but I don't know that I've ever seen one that has the hierarchy and lays it all out. So maybe that's just a little bit more looking for me, or maybe someone can direct me to that place.
Okay, next we have Board Member Lear with a question.
Yes, this caught me off guard as well. And again, maybe I also didn't read well enough. And it also catches me off guard because usually the superintendents and posse don't come to us to ask for employee positions. Is this because it's paid for from min release funds that you're asking the board?
May I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yes, that's the purpose, is the funding mechanism of it. And currently we have the funding for 1 year. And with that, then there may be an additional request moving forward, asking for funding for this.
And you broke up a little bit there, Patty, but I'm thinking you said, yes, it's because it's out of mineral lease fund that you're coming to the board. Is that right? And my recollection about using men release funds for employees was that it wasn't a good idea because it varies from year to year. But yet you still want to do this? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And we can have Deputy Jones speak more to this, but in looking at it, this is the only way of funding the position for this 1 year. And then we having a business case moving forward and looking at having to prioritize this in moving forward in future years.
That makes sense. And then can I follow up with a couple of other questions, Vice Chair Cummins? Another question I had is, you said the ADA. I'm wondering if you're talking about the ADA, or if you mean Section 504, and maybe it's both. But I thought Section 504 was under Dr. Voorhees. Am I mistaken about that?
Correct. Section 504 does go with under Dr. Voorhees, and we have Holly Bell that is in that position currently. She's also trying to fulfill some of these other job duties similar to the Title IX. It's more than the position. It's more work than one position can allow for, especially with the new regs that are coming in from Title IX. So it is, and 504 does go under Dr. Voorhees.
Okay. I think I understand now why you're asking the board, and I think I understand what you want in terms of the position. I'm also, only because we've been asked. If we hadn't been asked, I wouldn't care. But I'm also sort of interested where this position fits in the other board employee organization, because it seems like it relates to some of the legal responsibilities that some employees take on. It seems like it has some special ed implications. So I'm just curious. I'm uncomfortable with employees who are not adequately supervised. And this sounds like it would lend itself to someone being really fragmented. So I also would like to see an organizational chart where the person fits in. I don't know how I vote today on that, but that would certainly help me understand where this person would fit in and who would supervise him or her, and which section sort of, or maybe it's a standalone. I would just understand better how it fit into the organization if I could see an organizational chart. Thank you for your answers.
Chair Cummins, may I respond?
Yes.
Yes, and thank you for that question, because it's one that we were talking about as well. In the job description, the person reports to me as the student achievement, the deputy of student achievement. So within that, it's similar to the role that we have with Sarah Young. Sarah Young also reports to me. She has an overarching position that aids several different sections in our agency. So it's something that that we discuss, and we discuss Sarah Young's workload, and this would be the same that was going through that. She would work very closely with Director Voorhees on the work that is being done, and probably most closely with her team, but then being able to report to me in that area. I'm not sure, so I just want to areas that I do supervise and oversee. So that is in the area of federal programs, special education, teaching and learning, CTE, CNP, those areas, then they do all report under student achievement.
Thanks. That does help. And just one other thing, if I can, Vice Chair Cummins. I know that the regulations under Title IX have changed dramatically in the last couple of months, and I think it is wise to be providing someone at the USBE who can help LEAs navigate that, because it will take a resetting of the understanding of Title IX issues in the next 6 months, presuming they stay the same if we have a new president. So,
okay,
I do
Board Member
like that.
Board Member Gravitt.
Thank you, Brittany. I was wondering, would now be an appropriate time to make a motion? Are you okay with that, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to move to approve the request to fund a Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion position using the remaining balance of federal mineral lease funds in the USBE's discretionary fund account. And I would like to speak to that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion before us is that the board approve the request to fund a director of equity, diversity, and inclusion position using the remaining balance of federal mineral lease funds in the USBE's discretionary fund account. Okay, Board Member Gravitt, you'd like to speak to that?
Yeah, as the chair of the Standards and Assessment Committee, most of the work on equity, diversity, and inclusion is heard there. And I want to speak in favor of this request. I see the need for this work as increasing dramatically, particularly in the area of SPED. And I think that Dr. Patty Norman spoke to the many reasons why this is both necessary, practical, and timely. And as a teacher, I support it. As a board member, I support it. And as I see it as something we need now and not later. And I appreciate the work that's got into this and just wanted to encourage other board members to vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion to the motion, Board Member Newell.
Yeah, I wanted to interject, and I think a lot of the topics have been covered, but these types of positions, it's necessary that they are in the director position because of the fact that they are pivoting so many issues and concerns for all people involved with the state and our LEAs. We look at, a point where all of the equity can be vetted within a system, and that's generally what this position does, which also fills a lot of gaps and takes away a lot of the burden for some of the other some of the other state employees that are involved right now in looking at the compliance issues and issues to do with new regulations and so forth. So it's critical that there is somebody in this position to take out a lot of that extra weight and burden for a number of the other employees, and also that has a full understanding of what the parameters are for vetting the policies and issues that come up concerning equity within our system. And I know there's some concerns about accountability. This position is fairly easy to monitor. There are a number of ways of measurement, and after having the position in place for 1 year, those measurements will be visible, and you will see those in certain aspects of growth, certain aspects of change and shift in the way that policies are enacted. And it's something that is hard for a lot of people to really grasp a hold of. It's not really that tangible at first, but once you start to see how this type of position impacts the entity that it works with, it's really critical. We do have one at the higher education level, and that person is connected with all the institutions and working through in a collaborative way to make sure that initiatives are taken care of. And that's one of the biggest responsibilities of a person in this position, is that collaboration, is to bring everybody together, get all the pieces in the right place so that there aren't as many gaps in making sure that equity is included throughout the entire system, and that we can fracture any systemic barriers that may exist currently. So I'm behind this 110%.
Thank you. Board Member Earl.
Yeah, once again, I'm not sure when this was placed on our agenda, but I feel like this needs to be vetted a little more thoroughly. I would support sending it back to a committee like Finance and having it looked at through there or one of the other committees, so that we can really understand what this position is and not, anyways, I just don't feel like there is enough heads up on this to go into depth about it to make sure we've got the right thing, especially for the amount of money we're asking for this individual. So anyways, I won't be in support of this motion.
Board Member Davis.
Thank you. I would say, and this kind of piggybacks on something that was said earlier, but having just listened to one of the breakout sessions at the NASB conference on this, people were talking about all of the increased Title IX reporting requirements, and they're a lot, and they're kind of overwhelming to our schools. And I wasn't quite sure if it was schools or SEAs, but either way, I'm not terribly surprised that this position is being requested at this point. And I've been getting feedback recently that some of our reporting requirements are a lot, and our folks are feeling overwhelmed in their areas. And so if this is something that can help in that area, which it sounds like it is, I would be supportive, but I would also support in a future meeting, even if this passes or doesn't pass today, more information being brought back for those board members who are feeling like they need additional insights on how this position is going to be used.
Okay, Scott Jones, is that you with the hand up?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I just wanted to a couple of points. One board member, if I may, ma'am, asked about the utilization of FML, for positions. Yes, that's true. I mean, we really try to make sure that we don't use one-time money for positions. And before we come to the board requesting funds from your discretionary account, we really do make a concerted effort to go through our own budgets or the internal budgets. And, again, based on the amount for the position and the requirements that are right in front of us right now, there's just not enough money internally, if you will, or, outside of the board's budget. So that's why we're coming to you for with this request. Also, board member Newell made a great point. Federal mineral lease money is designed for research and development. So, this fits as an allowable use for this position, because that position would, along the lines of how he described, go research and develop the metrics and all the kind of communication lines and everything that Deputy Superintendent Norman, articulated in her presentation. So I just want to kind of, wanted to just follow up on those 2 points. Yeah, we don't typically, recommend using one-time money for positions, but because of the situation we're in right now, and then the fact that this is a developmental process, as Deputy Superintendent Norman described, we felt like we could do this as long as everybody understands that the long-term goal is to get, ongoing funding from it, whether it comes internally or by way of the Budgetary Procedures Act and, request for appropriations. Subject to any questions of me, I appreciate the time, ma'am.
Good, thank you. Board Member Hanson.
There we go. I think that we just heard a little bit about the one-time money. I have some concerns about that. I don't see this as a one-year position. I think this is a permanent position, and certainly in support of doing what we need to move forward in these areas. But I don't feel like we have enough information today about ongoing funding, for one thing, and also about how this position really fits and the job description fits with the other folks that are already doing some of this work. I'd really like to see that fleshed out and understand that more. So I'll be voting no today, not because of a lack of enthusiasm about someone to fill this role, but just because I feel like we haven't done our homework adequately, at least from the board side. I haven't been able to do my homework adequately to okay this big of an expenditure with no guarantee of ongoing funding.
Chair Huntsman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern was similar to, as I've had my hand raised, Board Member Hanson brought it up, but more so Scott, in how this position will be funded. And one of my concerns is, especially in government and especially at USBE, as let's just say the motion passes and we're moving forward, are we going to get the best candidate that we possibly can with them knowing that this doesn't have a long-term funding commitment? And so I think there's a place to have future discussion, whether it's in a committee or whatever, to address that particular issue. Just say the motion does pass. I think it's worthy of more discussion as this position is being advertised and filled. to have this be a long-term solution and not have just a short-term fix. Again, I'm really concerned about the caliber of the person that we're going to attract if they only know there's a short-term fix, unless somebody has some other method or some other idea how this would be funded long-term.
Superintendent Dixon, did you have a comment?
I do, thank you. I'm kind of in transition to my office, so hopefully you can hear me. Just a couple of things. One, several comments were made just wondering where this came from when it was on the agenda, and it was on the agenda when it came live, so we've had it in backup. Just want everybody to be aware of that. I also want to bring the board's attention to the fact that we had an equity department here for years. So this is, I think, my 11th or 12th year in the agency. And when I came to the agency, we had an equity department. It was comprised of 2 or 3 people. It was a director position. And to Board Member Lear's point, it sat out sort of on its own. There wasn't really a great connection to other departments. And as we have worked over the past year to try and find not only adequate funding, but alignment, and knowing that we really need this position, we have looked for quarters in the couch. We've done all those things we would normally do. We've tried to shift things around because we just see that we have a lot of risk in the agency of things that are connected to both federal requirements and moving the board's agenda of equity forward without having this position in place. So we went from having a department of 2 or 3 as a standalone to now quite a few years without a department, but we kind of parsed up all of those duties of the equity department and put them in different places, and it kind of got scattered around. And so as your leader, I really feel strongly that without a director in this position that really directs the work that Dr. Norman has laid out in this job description, I feel like we'll continue to have those risks and we won't be moving forward at the rate that we could. So we recognize that most of these kind of positions, we don't come to you and ask you for the position. But in this case, as has been defined by Deputy Jones, we're asking for this bridging of funds based on the fact that we feel like there's an urgency to have this position, with a business case moving forward and some alignment of different funds in the future.
Thank you. Board Member Gravitt.
Hi, thank you. I know I already spoke, but Superintendent Dixon said exactly, well, not exactly because she said it more articulately, but I so appreciate what she just said, because I was thinking, if we were trying to get a position for an assessment director or something we're more used to, maybe we wouldn't have such hesitation. And I think it speaks to how important it is to do this now and not wait. I mean, I see it in my classroom on a very, very personal level, but I just think now's not the time to wait on this position for the legal reasons, for the health reasons of our students. I just want to emphasize that, please, let's not wait on something so important. Even if you don't see it in your own personal life, this is so critical to so many of lives in our state. So thank you. I just want to speak again in support of the motion.
Board Member Thorpe.
I'd also like to speak in support of the motion. I think that we are in a moment where this position really matters, and we do have, I appreciated the superintendent's thoughtfulness at looking for quarters in the couch, and we've found some, and maybe I think we can agree that we would all like it to be a permanent, that those who are in support would like it to be a permanent position, but I think we do have this moment where we can do something, and we should. So I'm definitely in support of this.
Board Member Earl.
Sorry. Yeah, I would like to, I don't know if it's amend the motion. I'd like this to go to a committee. So is that just to amend the motion that it committee before it's considered, or to?
I believe that would be a motion to table. Is that correct, Lorraine?
No, he wanted to, you would refer it to committee.
Refer, so a motion to refer to
Motion
committee.
would take precedence over the main motion, so.
Okay, I would like to make the motion that refer this to committee for further review.
Would that require a second, Lorraine?
Yes.
Okay. So is there a second to the motion to refer to committee? Okay. So the motion before us is to refer this to committee. Any discussion to that? Is that a debatable motion? Sorry, Lorraine.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion to that motion? Okay, I see no hands. The motion before us is to refer this to committee. Please vote. Board Member Haynes. Looks like we have 6 in favor. Oh, there, it counts it at the bottom. Look at that cool feature, sorry. We have 6 in favor, 8 no, that motion does not pass. Lorraine, do you need me to read out the votes for you?
Yes, please.
Okay, so those in favor, please don't take your vote off, board members. Okay, so those in favor of referring to committee were Board Member Earl, Board Member Scott Hansen, Board Member Davis, Board Member Haynes, and Board Member Bolter, and Board Member Scott Nielsen. Do you need the other one, the other side, the no's?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, the no's are Board Member Cummins, Huntsman, Thorpe, Gravitt, Belknap, Lear, Newell, Marsh. Okay, that we're back to the motion that's on the table then, which is to approve, excuse me, read it for us, to approve the request to fund a Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion position using the remaining balance of federal mineral lease funds in the USBE's discretionary fund account. Is there any further discussion to that? Okay. Sorry, I see none, so I'm going to ask for the vote. Go ahead and please vote now. Okay, that motion passes. 10 yes, 4 no. The yeses were Board Members Cummins, Huntsman, Thorpe, Gravitt, Belknap, Lear, Davis, Newell, Haynes, and Marsh. The noes were Earl, Hansen, Bolter, and Nielsen.
And just to clarify, Member Cannon is absent, is that correct?
That's correct. Sorry. Okay. Okay, thank you. Deputy Superintendent Jones, does that complete the monthly budget report?
Ma'am, I moved a little bit too fast with the monthly budget report from 5.1. We have an update for the CARES Act funding. It's important that we get that from Sarah Young. Could we just go back to 5.1 and have her just provide you with the informational update on our status of funds with CARES Act money? I apologize for that.
No, that's okay.
All right. Thank you. This is Sarah Young, Deputy of Strategic Initiatives at the Utah State Board of Education, providing an informational update about current status of our CARES funding. So as a friendly reminder, CARES funding is really an umbrella term that incorporates a lot of separate and specific grant awards that we've put out to the field as provided the funding by the federal government to address COVID-19 needs for the K-12 educational field. I'm going to address the status of each of these awards separately, just providing information as to where we are in deployment of these grants and moving into a reimbursement phase. As all of these are federal funding, it's important to note that every single one of these grants is a reimbursement grant, where an LEA receives an award letter through our Utah Grants Management System and then has to submit receipts in terms of demonstrating the uses of those funds in alignment with the plan they have submitted and the allowable federal uses before they receive reimbursement. So let's start with the ESSER award. So ESSER is broken up into two separate awards within our agency. The first and the largest is going to be the 90% formula distribution that was provided by the U.S. Department of Education. This is a little over $61 million that was funded to the field based on the federal formula guidelines. And I'm pleased to report that all awards to eligible LEAs have been approved with plans active and available for reimbursement from our local education agencies. Currently, reimbursements as of Tuesday, when we pulled these numbers, is a little over 18 million of that funding has been requested by the field. These funds have an expiration date of September 30th, 2022. So they do have more time to be able to use them to address needs as they arise due to COVID-19. The second is a subset of the ESSER award. It comes from the state set aside, and it's where we established a base for the LEAs that did not receive a distribution through the original 90% that I just referenced. The Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund in this space brought all LEAs to a base award of $21,194. I'm pleased to let you know that 47 awards have been approved and are available for LEAs to seek reimbursement through the Utah Grants Management System. At this point, we have provided or received $67,000 in request against what is a little over $700,000 in awards for that specific grant. Moving into GEAR, GEAR stands for the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. This was $29 million. It was awarded to LEAs in coordination with our governor's office to serve special education and at-risk student group with needs, specifically learning gap needs due to COVID-19. Pleased to let you know that all the awards for eligible LEAs have been approved and are available for our locals to seek reimbursement. At the time we pulled this information on Tuesday, we've received a little over $931,000 in terms of reimbursement requests from the field. Moving into the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So this is the funding that was approved by our state legislature in August of 2020 to provide specific funding to specific use cases in K through 12 from the state Coronavirus Relief Fund. Those use cases are outlined here, and I'm going to touch on each of the projects separately to provide an update. In terms of a timeline for coronavirus relief, it is different than ESSER and GEAR in the fact that these are time-sensitive funds. So the funds were approved on August 20th. As a state board, you approved the distribution models last month. And then we released the grants to the field about a week later through the grants management system. You will note that those applications are due to our office by 5 p.m. this Friday, and that all goods and services associated with the use of these funds must be received by the K-12 LEAs by December 30th, 2020, as per federal legislation. So let's start with the first of those awards, the San Juan Wi-Fi Award. $3.9 million was authorized to San Juan School District for the expansion of broadband to students in their households, as stated in the legislation that was passed in special session. That award has been established in the grants management system, and the San Juan district leaders have a weekly touch point with staff. At our latest one, they provided an update that the towers are going up and new servers had been procured and arrived to expand the filtering services as they move towards additional access to the field. In regards to the K-12 broadband grant awards, those were awards that are provided to LEAs to provide broadband to students in need due to COVID-19. We have 41 local education agency awards that have been approved at a total of $5 million in total awards. And these funds do require that the money be spent towards prepayment of those services by December 30th, 2020. The project is projected to serve 34,500 students. And at the time of pulling the information, we had not received any reimbursement requests because these were approved this month. But yesterday we did receive one for $1,800. So just kind of a drop in the bucket, something we expect to see more of as the active awards move forward. The K-12 Personal Protective Equipment Grant, this was approved in board meeting for distribution in October. Of the $3.8 million that was authorized for PPE, I will note that a little over $1 million was spent on statewide PPE efforts. That would include the non-contact thermometers, the disinfectant wipes, the hand sanitizer stands, and hand sanitizer that we had already provided to the field. So a little over $2.8 million was then distributed to the LEAs with a $5,000 base plus distribution using the September 9th headcount. The K-12, it is specific to K-12 personal protective equipment and cleaning as determined by a local plan. You'll see the update available on the slide, which was from Tuesday of this week. I will let you know that we've made progress since then. So we actually currently only have $446,633.94 that is still pending award as of this afternoon. And we have 36 applications that are still outstanding to the field, 5 districts and 31 charter schools for this particular fund. Last but not least, we have the K-12 Coronavirus Relief Fund. This was 15.1 that was million that was authorized, $1 million for the K-12 broadband grant awards in September of 2020, and then 14.1 million for the LEA grant awards. This is again specific to classroom supplies, enhancements, and equipment as determined by the legislation. The number you see here was as of Tuesday, and so I'm pleased to let you know that we've made advancements in this award process as well. We currently have $2,686,653 that is still outstanding in available awards as of Thursday morning. That is 34 applications, 7 districts, and 27 charters. And I can let you know that over the course today, we have received at least 15 more grants that are in process for both this as well as the K-12 PPE in terms of review. So in regards to next steps, it's important to note that those 2 grants, K-12 PPE and K-12 CRF, are due this Friday at 5 p.m. from the field. So we have been reaching out from this office last week as well as this week to all of the districts and charter schools, making sure that they're aware of the timeline and have the opportunity to ask any questions about claiming this money and using it for appropriate use cases. We've also partnered with the Utah School Superintendents Association as well as the Utah Charter School Association. Those entities have been reaching to their partners as well to make sure that every single LEA is aware of the timeline and has that opportunity to respond and claim their funding. Last but not least is that the agency staff has worked on identifying additional K-12 statewide needs in alignment with the authorized use cases. So an example of that would be at the recent superintendent's meeting, receiving feedback about the need for additional hand sanitizer to refill the stands that have been provided. And so we are looking at being able to use any of the funding in the K-12 PPE that is not claimed at the local level to provide another distribution of that at the statewide level to meet that need. I'm available if there are any questions or feedback, but that just provides a quick update on where we are in relation to the CARES funding for K-12 for the state of Utah. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Are there any questions from board members? Sarah, I have one quick question. On your timeline slide, you mentioned that all goods must be received by December 30th. Are any LEAs concerned? I mean, I would imagine a lot of LEAs are possibly ordering similar items. Is there any scarcity out there that LEAs are worried about in receiving items before December 30th?
Certainly. So I will say, in regards to the communications I've had with district and charter school leadership, it is certainly the biggest concern associated with these awards, that specific timeline. So a couple of things that we've been recommending as staff. First and foremost is noting that these can be expenses that were already incurred by the LEA in response to COVID-19 as of March 2020. So if they had used local funds to, address PPE needs or potentially technology needs or plexiglass, that it would be possible to then shift those to this funding stream since they had already made those expenses and those goods had arrived, and free up those local funds to address additional COVID needs beyond the timeline. The second item I would say is that for many of our LEAs, the needs around things like Chromebooks, where we do know that there's a supply issue, those requests had been placed before the start of the school year. And so they're using kind of that timeline and that pre-purchase to be able to use against the awards once they've been approved through the grants management system.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for that update. Deputy Superintendent Jones, does that conclude the monthly budget report?
Yes, Chair Cummins, that concludes the report, subject to any other questions or concerns at this time.
Okay, thank you.